Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. You join us after our first game of the new Premier League season, where we played against newly promoted Luton Town. It was a thrilling game, but before we get into any of that, let's see who we've got on the show today. We welcome Joe. Joe, my friend, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, Tom. Absolutely buzzing with the first win. Came home last night, completely lost my voice. It's recovered today, luckily. But that just goes to prove how out of sync we are in the off season, because you go to the first game, you're shouting your head off, and you come home and you think, I should not have done that. But no, I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Yep, I'm doing really well, thank you. 3 points on the board. Really excited. Really excited to have football back. So yeah, it is good times. Dagan, our stateside correspondent, how are you feeling, my friend? How are you doing on this fine Sunday?
I'm doing well, despite wanting both Brentford and Spurs to lose. They drew, which was, a happy medium, I suppose. But I'm thrilled with our result yesterday. You know, some rough spots as we'll talk about, but the result you can't argue with. And 3 points, any 3 points is a good 3 points. So looking forward to next weekend.
Ooh, always looking forward to next weekend already, Dagan. Love it. And we also welcome back Chloe. Chloe, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Still a little bit hoarse from shouting when we scored. Because yeah, I did just go absolutely mental, as you should. Other than that, very good.
Glad to hear it. So let's dive right in then, guys. Let's talk about the starting 11, shall we? Because there were a few surprises, well, in my opinion anyway. So the starting 11 was Jason Steele in goal, a back four of James Milner, Jean-Paul Van Hecke, Dunk and Estupinian, a midfield two of Pascal Gross and Mahmoud Dahoud, and then Solly March, João Pedro Matoma, and Welbeck in the forward spaces. A few surprises, as I say, Joe, for me, one being Billy Gilmore, who I thought would have been a nailed on starter. So, what did you make of the starting 11 for our first game of the season?
Yeah, Billy Gilmore, given how highly De Zerbi's spoken about him, I was thinking it's his spot. Moises Caicedo obviously out of the squad, so I was thinking, yeah, it's Billy's to take. So yeah, slightly surprised to see a midfield two of Dahoud and Gross for two reasons, really. One, obviously, because Billy wasn't there, and I thought Milner would be in that spot and Gross would be at right back. So I was quite surprised to see James Milner at right back, but whenever James Milner's on the pitch, I think this is going to be a theme going forwards. Um, Wherever he is on the pitch, I think you'll be comfortable. I think you'll be okay with it. And we'll talk more about his performance, obviously, as we go on, because that boy is an absolute unit. I don't know where we found him. I don't know if he's a South American wonder kid, but my God, 22nd season in the Premier League, Tom. That is absolutely ludicrous, and it's props to him. But yeah, that was the surprise. I thought Milner would be the workhorse in midfield rather than Pascal, and gutted for Billy to lose out. But obviously, Billy came on a little bit later, so there's a lot of names to get in there for Roberto. And I've said before, thank God it's not me that has that headache, because you've got a lot of players to keep happy.
Yeah, you really do. And as you're right, we will certainly be talking about James Milner a lot more throughout this podcast because he was very, very good yesterday. And he didn't look anywhere near, 37, 38 years old. He looked like a mid 20-year-old midfielder. Dagan, Joe touched on something there that I think it'd be good to come to you on this one. The strength in depth. It's a headache to have for Roberto De Zerbi now. I mean, the bench yesterday was absolutely stacked. So you said in a tweet very well that it was a thing that people were worried about. Do you think people are still going to be worried about our depth given everything we're playing for this season?
I think people and like De Zerbi are not necessarily worried about our total depth. I think there may still be some worry about specific positional strength, particularly in that sort of Caicedo destroyer role, and then maybe with sort of a true full time right back, um, and then probably third on the list is that left footed right winger that I've talked so much about. But I don't know. And I think the other place, as we look at our aging players, we may need some more homegrown quality guys. It'd be interesting to see if we try to pick one of those up late in the window as well. Yeah, I mean, Webster, Lallana, Lamptey, Ayari, and of course Motor, who's injured. That's 5 guys who are quality, who were not on the team sheet at all, anywhere. So it's not just the lineup decisions week to week. It's really going to be who's even available to play week to week, which again, it's not week to week. It's going to be, every 3 or 4 days, I guess, where we have a match. So guys really will get to rest, which I think is a beautiful thing. So I hope, looking at what we have right now, the fears are allayed. I think they should be.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think there were times that last season where we looked very light, especially towards the tail end of the season, which I suppose wasn't all that surprising. But Chloe, just really briefly on that depth, Roberto De Zerbi has said that we don't have enough yet. We need to complete the squad. Were there any surprises for you in the starting 11? And going off Roberto De Zerbi's comments, what positions do you think we still need to strengthen in?
Well, I didn't expect Milner to start. He did do very well in the friendly, I thought. So it wasn't a complete surprise. But I thought Gross would play at right back and Gilmour would start in the midfield. As for the depth we need, I think it's just certain players. For right back, we've got Lamptey, who I think is a very good player, but he is a bit injury prone. And then we've also got Veltman, who that isn't actually his position. He's a centre back and he does an amazing job there. But you still think maybe we would be better off if we had someone of Purvis's quality at right back as well. Other than that, I do think we'll need a Caicedo replacement because I don't think any of our other midfielders sort of do that defensive work as well as he does. His tackles and interceptions were vital for us last season. And I saw about the amount of times Luton got into our box. I saw a tweet about it earlier. It was more than sort of other relegation threatened teams last season, and thinking maybe that is because we didn't have the sort of Caicedo type midfielder cutting the ball out.
Yeah, I think you said something similar in pre-season, Dagan, about if Caicedo's on the pitch, that goal doesn't happen. So I think it's, and I'm sure it's not lost on the club at all, that that midfield destroyer role, as Dagan call it, is still a necessity. Now, Joe, coming back to what Chloe says about that depth in right back, Lamptey, I'd argue, and I have done on the pod before, that he's not a right back; he's a right wing back, and I think they're a different role entirely. Now, Joel Veltman obviously has signed on for a new contract, and he's played at right back before, but he's currently not playing there in favour of a midfielder, be that Pascal Gross. We saw Caicedo play there last season, and now James Milner. If you're Joel Veltman, are you feeling a bit miffed?
Yeah, slightly. I don't know. I think Joel Veltman's character is enough that he is happy to play whatever role De Zerbi needs. He wouldn't have signed the new 2-year deal if he was unhappy with that. I think Chloe's spot on. I think his best position is centre back, and I think he's in amongst a decent selection of centre backs to get that starting role. Only 2 can start. At fullback, only 1 can start. With James Milner playing right back, again, Chloe pointed out, quite surprised to see him playing there. But I think if he was to start there every Premier League game and put in a performance like that, more than happy. More than happy. Even if we don't sign another right back, if he's going to play like that, we're okay. Especially with Veltman can chip in there. Lamptey, if he ever recovers, can chip in there. So I don't think it's as much of a worry as people are saying. But that's just my opinion. But again, something else Chloe said, imagine a Purvis Estupiñán inverted on that side. Would be unreal. And I think that's the missing link. So would I be against us signing another right back? Absolutely not. Would I be devastated if we don't? Absolutely not. I think either way, we are okay, whatever happens.
Yeah, very fair. Go on, Dagan.
I've had some really interesting conversations around this because I've been advocating for the same thing that you are, Joe. And I think the counterpoint that again, I tend to agree with you. I feel like Purvis's quality, both going forward and his strength at the back when he's there, is tremendous. I've heard a case made that, people fear we'd be a little like Ainge Ball today if both of those guys are plowing forward and we're just too vulnerable to the back. And I think, maybe there's a happy medium where they're in rotation, right? So Purvis doesn't have to lead the Premier League by 76 sprints. Did you guys hear that yesterday? I guess you were at the game. You didn't hear it on the broadcast, but on the broadcast, Purvis had, and again, he missed the first few games. He wasn't with us. 76 more sprints forward than any other player in the Premier League last year. That doesn't seem sustainable, right? Because he's, I think, about to turn 26. You would hope we could find some way to relieve him from the pressure of running more than everyone else in the Premier League. Although I guess we've added Milner, who's famous for running more than anyone else in the Premier League. So maybe that is the plan. But yeah, I offer that counterpoint only because, we agree on this topic. But Chloe, I think you're right. I would love to see someone of the quality of Purvis. And I think the team could decide what type of player that is. But if we could have someone there who is stable as a number one, what a gift that would be. So I think it's a good shot by you.
I do think it's quite interesting because it does seem to be the fashion at the moment to have one of your players at the back, be they a right back or a centre back, then drift into midfield. We've seen it with John Stones. We've seen it with Trent Alexander-Arnold. So when you're in attack, it's a three at the back. Obviously, with Purvis, it wouldn't be a three at the back. It'd be, I don't even know. But having you say that, Dagan, gave me horrible flashbacks to a certain Finnish manager we had several years ago, and it was just suicidal football. So yeah, let's see how that one goes in terms of coming. We've still got 3 weeks left of the transfer window, and I know there's a certain transfer saga that we all want to be over as soon as possible, which will hopefully mean we can look forward instead of back. So let's talk about the game then, shall we? Let's actually talk about the game that we're here to analyse. I don't think it was anyone's surprise, Chloe, that in the first half we had a lot of chances against a newly promoted team. In fact, very early, Lewis Dunk had our very first opportunity. We're heading over from a cross from Dahoud, and Pedro also had multiple chances. What did you make of our early attacking threat?
I was thinking, oh God, it's one of those days, isn't it? But I think we were just lacking a bit of sharpness. I almost wonder if we didn't really have enough friendlies. I don't know if 4 is sort of standard, but I do feel that we were lacking sharpness, particularly in the first half, sort of got more into it as the game went on. But yeah, I think missing chances on your sort of Premier League debut isn't too much of a concern. I can forgive Pedro for that, especially as he had a good game otherwise. And it wasn't one of those days, thankfully, but it did feel like it could be.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look back through all the chances, Welbeck could have scored several. Pedro could have scored several. We hit the post multiple times, which we will, of course, talk about in a bit. But Joe, let's talk about João Pedro then, because he's had a very exciting pre-season. He looks the real deal. Yesterday, it seemed like he was going to get a multitude of chances, but none of them just seemed to be going in. But the lad kept his head up, and of course, we will talk about his goal from the penalty spot a bit later. But what did you make of João Pedro in that first half?
He was lively. He was getting involved. He didn't look scared of the occasion. He looked up for it right from the start, and I think that's all you can ask. As Chloe said, I don't think there were many faults. For me, I'd be more scared if he wasn't getting those chances, if he wasn't getting into those positions and he was getting bullied off the ball left, right and centre and sort of lets the occasion take over him. But I was very impressed and I just wanted him to get that first goal because we all know what goals can do for a player. We saw Solly March after he scored his first goal last season, and that was his first goal in something crazy like 2 years, and then he went on to score loads. So I think it was deserved that he would take the penalty, and obviously I think that he's going to become the regular penalty taker. I was a little bit surprised that James Milner wasn't the one to step up, to be honest. I think if James Milner was on the pitch when we're given a penalty, his penalty record is unbelievable. But glad that João Pedro has the confidence to take that ball, look straight down the barrel of the net and put it, I thought when the goalkeeper clipped it on his hand, because I was like right in line with it. When the goalkeeper clipped it on his hand, it went slow motion, and I just needed that net to rustle. And thank God it did. And João Pedro is off the mark, and I think we could see a really exciting goal scoring season for him.
Dagan, how important is it, in your opinion, that João Pedro has gotten off the mark very early, well, as early as possible, really? Because obviously in some situations, if you go games without scoring, it can sort of build up and mentally you start getting that mental block. So how important do you feel it will be for João Pedro that he's got that goal very early?
I certainly think it helps. It can't hurt. And I'm glad he made the pen. I think, having a perfect record last year, if we missed our first in the PL, we had a perfect record on pens last year with McAllister. Missing our first would be pretty crushing, especially after he missed the easy chance. So I think in that sense, it was huge that he converted there. Not only did he draw the penalty, there were two others that were near penalties. And I would say this is every time I've seen us play and him on the pitch, he's been the best player on the pitch every single time. He's going to be tremendous. I think his goal involvements, will be at a minimum in the 20 to 25 range. I know that's going to shock people, but he's so unselfish, and that makes him much, much more of a threat, is because he will make that extra pass. And we could talk a little about, a time where he probably should have had a goal yesterday, but was missed by his up top partner.
Let's talk about that up top partner then, Chloe, because, on the face of it, you could say that yesterday we set up in a 4-4-2, which is perhaps different from our 4-2-3-1 that we've seen. What did you make of the Welbeck João Pedro partnership? Welbeck got a fair bit of flack from some of our fans on Twitter yesterday. No surprise. So what did you make of it, Chloe?
I think what you've got to remember, they've only had a sort of handful of games to sort of get to know each other. Obviously, there was that occasion when, was it Webster collided with Dahoud? Was it Webster?
Welbeck,
Sorry,
yeah,
Welbeck.
they collided with each other, and Welbeck was like, "I want a penalty," and it was like, "Oh, you just hit Dahoud, mate."
Yeah. So yeah, I do think there'll be a good partnership going forward. I think it's just a matter of, sort of learning to. There was one chance with where Welbeck shot, and maybe he should have squared it to João Pedro, who was in a better position to shoot. But I do think it's just a matter of getting to know each other's game, and maybe they should have communicated a little bit better. Maybe João Pedro should have, called that he wanted the ball. I don't know if he did or not. I couldn't see when I rewatched it. But yeah, I think it's a good partnership going forward.
I think if people want to know about strike partnerships, there's a little bit of a segment of Daniel Sturridge talking about it after a Chelsea game last season, and he spoke about his strike partnership with Luis Suarez, and how much they worked on knowing where each other were going to be, knowing when to pass the ball, knowing when to have a shot themselves, and it was a really interesting piece of punditry. So if piques anyone's interest, go and search it up. It's really good watch.
Yeah, and it's partnerships and what you're saying there, Joe, about knowing where each other are going to be. That's not going to happen in a preseason. That's going to take hours upon hours of playing alongside one another. And I think João Pedro said in an interview at the end of preseason that he was really looking forward to building that partnership with Danny Welbeck. We'll talk a bit more about the sort of the chances a bit in a minute. But no, I think that's just important to remember. Those partnerships, they do take time. If you look at some of the best strike partnerships we've ever seen, Henry and Bergkamp, Dwight York and Andy Cole, they played together so much They just instinctively knew where each other were going to be. It's going to take time. Let's talk about our opponents then, Joe. Let's give a bit of the spotlight to Luton Town, because we said in our pre-match sort of chat with a Luton podcast that we thought they'd come out of the traps really early and they would put pressure on us. And that first half, Joe, it wasn't easy for us. I mean, Lewis Dunk and Jean-Paul Van Hecke, they did have their work cut out because they were a very physical front pairing for Luton. What did you make of our opponents in their first game in the Premier League?
I thought they were doing the jobs that they had to do. I think their manager set them up really well. I think maybe their manager sort of thought, if we do go out of the traps really quick here, Brighton can catch us on the counter. We're one down before we know it. And then you saw what happened yesterday. Once we scored our first, I think we were a little bit more comfortable up until their penalty. But, even their penalty was a bit dubious. But that's a whole nother talking point. But I thought they did quite well, to be honest. And I just got a shout out to their fans, because their fans were absolutely class. Sung from the first minute right to the last. And even at full time, like they just lost 4-1. And Freed from Desire was playing, and they were having a whale of a time in the away end. And that's what I said to the guys that I went on their podcast. I said, enjoy every moment, because we were where they were. And I'm sure that if it was our first game in the Premier League against a club that had just got into Europe and we'd gone out there and put on the performance that they did, I think even our podcast title doesn't really give them the credit, because I thought they were good throughout. And there's lots of moments where they can improve. I think it was just a lot of naivety which led to our goals inevitably, especially Simon Dingra's one. But I think they've got a lot to learn, and if they don't learn it quickly, they will be in trouble. But I think their manager's good enough to teach them the lesson quick enough.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly no slouches. I mean, Dagan, they were posing a threat on the counter-attack, and they were actually quite good at utilising the space that was left behind Purvis when he pushed forward as well as he does. So what did you make of Premier League newcomers?
Well, I will say one, Dave was exactly right with his 6 new player starters. He named all 6 correctly. So kudos to Dave from the Luton podcast who was on with us last time. Kabore, especially on the right, I thought was excellent, making life really difficult for Mitoma, and he was really excellent going forward. He's a City loanee. You would expect he has a lot of talent, but I thought he acquitted himself really, really well. I'd read a little bit and knew that he was very capable going forward. He's sitting on my first ever fantasy Premier League bench right now. But I went ahead and got him in my lineup because I thought the upside was high. But I was really impressed with him, and Giles acquitted himself well on the other side too. And I think really, if we look at this game, again, I'm not supposed to be talking about Luton here, but they did a really nice job containing Mitoma and March, except for that one flash that led to the first goal, where Mitoma, put a beautiful cross in, and March just, outplayed whoever was in front of him there to win that header.
I think their physicality as well will pose a lot of threats for teams, because they were getting some really good crosses in. Dave pointed out Giles on the left-hand side can put in a really good cross, and he was doing it all game long. And I think had our defenders not been as switched on as they are, and would not have Milner and that structure that you get from Milner and Dunk, I think there could have been a lot of goals headed in from Clinton. Is it Clinton Morris? Whatever his name is.
Yeah, that was
I thought they were quite physical.
You're right. We gave up a ton of corners, or they earned a ton of corners.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a moment, I think it was in the second half, where Morris really should have scored, but didn't. And as you say, Joe, that's like the clinical nature of the Premier League, and their manager said it after the game. You've got to take your chances at this level. Chloe, let's talk about taking chances then. Let's talk about the goal, the first goal of our season, scored by Solly March. As I think, Dagan, you've just said, Luton were very good at containing Mitoma and March until they didn't. And as soon as they switched off for just a moment, we pounced and we managed to score our first goal. It was a fantastic cross from Mitoma, and March gets a rare-headed goal. What did you make of our first Premier League goal of the season?
Yeah, it was just really good. A header from Solly March. I think he scored one last season, but it's still something that surprises me because, he wasn't scoring at all under he who must not be named. And now he's scoring with his head, and he's not the tallest player either. But it was a great finish from him, and it was an equally great cross from Matoma. Put the ball exactly where March wanted it, and he did well to get to it first, and then it's 1-0, and I was a bit relieved, I can't lie. I was thinking, oh phew, we finally scored. Maybe it won't be one of those days. But yeah, I just thrilled to be 1-0 up.
I was going to ask you guys. I mean, there were times where the crowd was deathly silent yesterday, at least to the broadcast. And I even saw some comments on Twitter about that. What's it like when you have that feeling of dread that you were talking about, Chloe, where it's like, is it going to be one of those days? And then that goal goes in. Can you describe for those of us who haven't been to the MX, what is it like when that happens?
There you go. There's a good example of it.
It's just the moment the actual goal goes in.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone jumps up and screams and shouts and makes their voice go.
It's pure
and then
relief.
worries it's going to be offside because you can't see up the
that is exactly it. I didn't celebrate that much in the first goal because I was thinking because I was obviously you're down my end as well, Chloe. It was the other end, so I'm thinking I'm not going to celebrate too much because any moment now that stupid purple sign is going to go up on that stupid big screen and tell me that I can't celebrate a goal. And luckily there was no VAR check, and that's when you can actually sit down and go, thank God for that. We're okay. It's when Richie Reynolds announces over the tannoy, goal scorer for the Albion, Solly March, and you're like, okay, thank God for that, because obviously he's in the know whether there's a check going on. He doesn't want to embarrass himself, so I think Tom summed it up. Just pure relief.
Yeah.
I think it's worth remembering as well. I know that Brighton's home crowd gets memed a lot, but our away support is always fantastic. And as a home crowd, we've always, for as long as I've supported the album, so a fair old while now, we've always been a very reactionary crowd. And if there's not much really going on the pitch, the crowd are very, very quiet.
And it rubs off.
Difficult to start songs off as well. So
I think it rubs off on everyone else as well that's around you. So you get one person feeling anxious, they'll feel anxious, and the whole ground eventually will start to feel anxious. And then that's when you don't feel like standing up, singing and giving your support because you're nervous yourself. And then you don't want to give that off to the players, but there's no doubt they feel it. But obviously they proved us wrong yesterday because they shut us up. Well, they didn't shut us up. They made us loud again.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. But Joe, before we get into the loudness of it all, we went into the halftime break at 1-0. Now, I don't think it's unfair for me to say that we really could have scored 4 or 5. And I think at halftime, perhaps I was being very reactionary, but I wasn't best pleased with our finishing because I think, and I get it's the first game and, there's still sharpness to come. So I get it. And I'm not one of these people that's going to go on Twitter in all caps and say, get out of my club, blah, 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 blah. But I was posing a question to you and everyone in the group chat, really. And that was, did we let Undav, who I believe is probably the most clinical of the finishers at the club, did we let him go too soon? And should we have kept him?
I love Dennis Undav. I really admired his attitude towards the position he was in, and the fact that he was out of favour and he fought his way back and scored 5 goals in 8 games at the end of last season. Absolutely fantastic. I think,
and a great one in pre-season as well. Really good one.
Yeah. So I think, he will be a big miss eventually when squad depth gets to us, and we're screaming out for another option. But I think it's not cause for concern that the finishing wasn't quite there yesterday. I don't think it is. Oh, we need Dennis Undav in that situation. I think it's very much what Chloe said. First game, and again, as long as we're creating the chances, I'm okay with it. if some of the chances go in, which they did. So I don't think there's overly cause for concern with Dennis Undav not being around, but I would absolutely love if he was in that position as well. So I hope that's given a balanced answer on, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, Joe and Tom, I think Undav deserves better than being the fourth choice. And I think our club felt that way. If he was willing to stay and be the fourth choice, knowing he was the fourth choice, then maybe fine. But, I think there are going to be times where João Pedro is at the 9. And given that fact, I think there's just not a lot of room for Dennis. And he was great. I mean, he really came on at the end of the season. And I think if we were just comparing players and Welbeck wasn't Welbeck and he didn't have the history and the reputation and the leadership, right? If we were just talking about skills, I think a lot of us, not all of us, but I think a lot of us might choose Undav over Welbeck. But I think it's all of those intangible things that Welbeck brings to the club and to the team and to the younger guys that made him the third choice, even though he's the first choice. But I don't think anybody would pick him over Ferguson or Pedro at this point. So
I think
we didn't have room for both those guys.
I think Danny Welbeck is the first choice for Roberto De Zerbi. I think he sees what Danny Welbeck can bring in leadership up front, and I think he does it well. Obviously, people get frustrated when he misses the chances that he misses, but there is also no doubt that he can score a few goals when we need him to. But as you say, Dagan, I think us fans feel differently towards, would you have Ferguson over Welbeck? Yes. But I think we have to accept that in De Zerbi's mind, Welbeck is first choice if he's fit.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that's true, but I hear you. I mean, just because he started the first game, like, I think he's got to pick his spots where to use Ferguson because he's 18. And it'll be interesting to see as this season wears on. In the biggest of games, in the biggest of moments, who does he have out there? And a lot of times, as a coach, I would say it's not who starts the game, it's who finishes it a lot of times in a close game. And I know basketball and soccer are different sports, but yeah. At this point, I think Ferguson is the closer.
I heard that's something we can touch on, Tom, is the finishes that we've got to come off the bench, because that's ridiculous.
Oh yes, of course we will. We'll get on to that. But we haven't even started talking about the second half yet. So let's start talking about that, because Chloe, the second half started really brightly. It started very similarly to the way that the first half ended. Brighton had some fantastic opportunities. Pascal Gross hit the post after João Pedro drew a free kick from showing some sublime skills. And then once again, João Pedro at the heart of the action into what many are saying is a dubious penalty call. The Luton player, I think it was Tom Lockyer, has his arm across João Pedro, who goes down. For you, Chloe, was it clumsy defending, or was it a soft penalty, or was it just a bit of both?
Yeah, I do think it was a bit of both. But his arm was across him and the ref gave it. I think when the ref gives that, VAR is not going to overturn it because it's not clear and obvious. So I do think a penalty was probably a fair decision. And I think they got a soft one up the other end. If even soft, to be honest, their one. I'm sure we'll get onto that. But I did think it was a penalty, and obviously Pedro did well to put it away. I always think sometimes it's harder when you're the player fouled, taking the penalty. And sometimes I think that it should be the player fouled that takes the penalties. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I was always led to believe it was supposed to be bad luck for the player who wins the penalty to take the penalty. Obviously, I'm not one for superstition, but João Pedro obviously isn't either then, Joe, because as Chloe says, he steps up, he puts it into the net. The goalkeeper, I think he does get a hand to it, but it's just too powerful for for him to keep out the João Pedro effort. And as we said already, João Pedro gets on the score sheet in his first start in the league. Big moment for him, 2-0 up. Things are looking peachy.
Yeah, nice to see a smile on his face as well because I think from the preseason games, whenever he scored, I think he's maybe scored one, did he? Or two? Um, he obviously, because it's a preseason game, probably doesn't overly care. He's just happy that he's put it away. But I don't think he smiled. So it was nice to see him happy and celebrating with the team and really taking in the North Stand, celebrating his first Premier League goal for Brighton. And you know you're onto a winner when you've got off the mark in your first game. So I think the next goal has got to come soon for him to keep up this momentum. Momentum's everything for a striker, and we could very well see him starting in the more advanced role. But then who do you have behind him? Is that NC? So De Zerbi, your job is so difficult, mate. I'm so sorry. You've got too many players to choose from, but I love it. Like we sat there and you're like, we've got Matoma, we've got March, things are going great. Oh, look, there's a Dingra. Oh, we've not even seen Enciso yet.
Or
What a time. Have I
Adam
missed someone?
Lallana, because I still
Exactly.
maintain that every time Adam Lallana steps on that pitch, he's one of the best players out
Oh,
there.
he's so good. He is an absolute dream to have at our football club. And we've got another one of him in James Milner. I joke and say, oh, look, it's the England national squad retirement home. But my gosh, they are bloody good footballers.
Scenes when they do the Milner Lallana Buzzers Boot Room quiz. Make it happen. Make it happen.
Petition in the description below.
Dagan, before we go down the other end, let's just get your opinion. Was it a penalty for Brighton?
I agree with Chloe entirely. That soft, questionable. I think if the defender doesn't go over, and the commentator said this, it's not a penalty. But the defender kind of falling over on top of him, being clumsy, even though the contact initially was minimal, I think that probably was the difference in the call. And to Chloe's point, not enough for VAR to overturn once it was called to the field.
Now, it wouldn't be a brand new Premier League season if we're not going to talk about VAR, would it? No, of course not, because we're talking about one questionable penalty. Let's go down the other end, Chloe, and talk about the other questionable penalty. Cross into the box, bounces onto Lewis Dunk's back as he's sliding in, and as it bounces up the other side, it hits his elbow, and it's given as a penalty. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't really know what he's supposed to do there, short of chopping his arms off. So, yeah, never a penalty for me. I saw a similar, I can't remember which game it was, but when I was watching Match of the Day, I saw a similar call in another game and it wasn't given. So yeah, I do find the refereeing decisions is just inconsistent, which is what annoys me. So yeah, soft penalty for me. And I don't think it should have been a penalty at all, to be honest.
No, it's like, as you say, what is Dunk supposed to do? Joe, are we going to have to start getting rid of people's arms, to stop this? Because it seems utterly ridiculous. That's a completely natural position for Dunk's arm to be in. It's not like there's a Luton Town player in the box ready to tap it in. Make it make sense, Joseph.
I can't. How do you make VAR make sense? You just don't. I don't want to sit here and moan about it too much because, as you say, it's the first Premier League game. Do we really have to be starting moaning about VAR now? Yes, because it's affected the game, but no, it's not a penalty. It's just not. What is Lewis Dunk to do? What is a man to do? He's got his body in the way. And it's similar to the Alexis one last season at Spurs when he's turned his body away and it's hit his bum and then hit his hand. What can he do? He's like this, and Lewis Dunk's like this. Oh, it's stupid.
Joe, I've got a way that we can make VAR make sense. Dagan, I think you've seen it because I think you shared it with the group. The video that is circulating on Twitter of VAR decision making in French football. Total transparency with the referee and those watching the footage. You can hear every single word. Is this the only way we are going to stop VAR inconsistencies? Because a statistic from Ligue 1 last season was that 83% of major errors were corrected due to VAR last season. 83%. Is this the only way, Dagan?
there's may not be the only way, but it surely seems like a better way to what we're getting, where there's no transparency, there's no reasonable explanation, the rules don't seem consistently applied, the standard of clear and obvious is a mystery, and listening to a conversation between the VAR officials and the on-field official will at least give you a sense of how this conclusion was reached. Which, if nothing else, if there really are errors being made in judgment, in use of the technology, that becomes transparent for everybody, and we can understand what went wrong. And Joe, I think it's while it may seem like piling on to say this was ridiculous that we gave up this goal, it's certainly not sour grapes. It doesn't hurt us that we give up this goal. We have no other reason to complain about it. So it's a great opportunity to say this is just a chance to complain about VAR itself. It didn't affect us, didn't hurt us, but just do better. Like Premier League, you're the biggest, best league in the world. Do better, right? Just doesn't seem an unreasonable ask that we shouldn't be looking at other leagues and saying, wow, look how right they're getting it and how wrong we're getting it. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And
Dagan, biggest and best league in the world, and yet the Australian league does it better than we do.
The thing that's infuriating is that the technology is there ready to be used. It is right there. It's not in development. There's nothing like Howard Webb's come out and said, yeah, we should do it. Bloody do it then. Implement it. Just put a microphone on them. It really isn't hard. I can do it. If I can do it, the top people in the Premier League can do it. It's a joke.
That it is. It is not the first time we're going to complain about it, and it certainly won't be the last. You can guarantee it. You can come back to the end of the season. We'll clip this little bit I'm saying here right now, and we'll stick it on, because I'm sure we'll moan about it a lot more coming up. Just before we talk about the next goal, I just want to talk about the subs, Chloe, because we made a raft of changes in that second half, one of which being Simon Dingra and Billy Gilmore coming on for Dahoud and March. And I just wanted to get your thoughts as someone who was in the game about, Mo Dahoud's first game in the Premier League, because some people on the Twitter, not Twitter, X, have said that our midfield looked quite light. And I think that's a fair comment to say. We don't have that Caicedo at the moment, but Dahoud seemed to have a good game yesterday, very silky with his passing. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, I thought he was good. He was involved in a lot of our build-up play. I believe it was him that passed the ball to Matoma for our first goal. And I did think, yeah, he looked solid. Maybe he's not the same sort of role as Caicedo. I don't think we really have anyone in that Caicedo type role. So maybe that's why our midfield seemed light. But I think he did well in the role he was given, and looking forward to seeing more of him.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think he's got an exciting future ahead at Brighton. He was supposed to be the next Gundogan at Borussia Dortmund. So let's see what we can do with him. Joe, just really quickly, what did you make of Dahoud's performance yesterday?
I love him. I think he's absolutely fantastic. The work rate he puts in, never gives up. He's everywhere. He's defending. He's getting involved with attacks. It's exactly what you want. And any little fault that anyone saw yesterday from him, I hope De Zerbi can coach it out of him. And I've got full faith that he will. There's a very, very, very good player in there, and we've got the best coach possible to bring that out of him. So very impressed. Been impressed with him all pre-season. And I think he's only going to grow as the season goes on.
Yeah, there's a lovely video of De Zerbi and shaking hands with the players after the game yesterday, and then he gives Dahoud this massive hug. It's really nice, really wholesome content.
Yeah. That was a great moment. I was gonna say the same thing. It's a great moment. You could see something in that, something of you're here, you belong, and I thought he earned it. It's interesting. What I was gonna say is, there's no Caicedo. And I was thinking about this yesterday during the game. We have sort of all of our current deeper lying midfielders. They're all eights. And we're sort of playing 2 8s together and letting them take turns being the 6, depending upon the situation, where one will drop back and try to recover. They're both expending a lot of energy. They're both tracking back. Sometimes they're sliding into coverage for the right back. They're putting in a lot of work, those guys. But it'll be interesting to see. I hope we get the 6 in. Certainly we can rotate and use this kind of lineup against opponents that maybe we're stronger than. But I think it's going to be a real test to our defense, the way we plow forward, if we don't have someone who can make up for the mistakes and break up counterattacks in particular.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and a really astute observation, because, and I said this with all due respect, there's one thing doing it against Luton, and we saw last season against a very poor Wolves side, but when you go up against teams that have got a very good midfield, we might come a cropper there. So just be mindful of that. Let's talk about the third goal then, because Simon Dingra, who comes on off the bench for his first appearance, for the club, he pounces on a defensive mix-up Joe at the back, Luton Town at 6s and 7s, and he hammers home on the half volley. Simon has looked very exciting in pre-season, really strong. In fact, I was even considering starting him instead of Matoma, because I was that impressed with his pre-season. What did you make of the goal, Joe, and Simon's brief cameo?
No, I agree. Just to touch on Matoma, I think I said it either on the space or on the previous podcast that we did, that I hope it's a case of he's not giving everything in pre-season and he turns it on when it really matters. And I thought Matoma was flawless yesterday. I really, really enjoyed him.
Yeah, that's actually, can I just quickly say, Joe, I just want to say as well, I do agree. I thought Matoma was very, very good yesterday. So me saying, I think Simon should have started, was based on the pre-season, but Matoma, excellent yesterday.
Definitely. But as I said earlier in the podcast, what an amazing thing we have to bring these players off the bench. And Dingra is explosive. He is unbelievable. And the boy can finish as well. We saw that in pre-season. But from that angle, he didn't have much to shoot at all. He completely acted instinctively. And then bang, goal. And yeah, it was an absolute howler from the Luton defender. But if you're going to have players that act on that so quickly, happy days. Because in the past, you would have seen some of our attackers maybe be a little bit more indecisive and not take the shot the first time and think about it too much and maybe try and square it. But Simon Dingra has pounced on the mistake, bang, goal, and then we're pretty much out of sight.
Yeah, it was a really well taken goal. And I don't know, his smile, man, it's that damn smile and his little celebration. I just like it. I like him already. Let's put it that way. He's made one proper cap appearance for us, and I like him already. There's just something about him. He's just, again, exciting players. And Dagan, as Joe just said, we've got a host of exciting players. You said it already. Sometimes it's not about the guys who start, it's about the guys who finish. Billy Gilmore came on. Dingra came on. Evan Ferguson came on. We've got a really exciting bench that can come on and finish the game. And boy, did we finish the game yesterday.
Yeah, we did. And I don't think that was just, Luton's new to the Premier League and they're not ready. I think we had the ball 70+% of the game, and any team is going to struggle to deal with, teams aren't going to change out their whole back line. They're not going to change out their whole midfield. And when we bring on the quality of subs that we're going to consistently be able to bring on, no matter who starts, it's going to be a problem. So I think there could be a lot of games won late this year, where it looks like we're trying to break through, and then we bring on the likes of these guys that just are dogged and relentless and have a nose for the goal, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, the second goal, I know we haven't talked about it yet, but Dingra almost had two.
Yeah.
Ferguson snatched that goal from him. Not intentionally, right? I mean, it was right for him to go for the ball, but Dingra was going to be there if he wasn't. Just a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. I would have loved to have seen him maybe 10 minutes earlier, but
yeah, but I'd say Enciso came on, but it was on the 88th minute. And I know we had some extra time, which we'll talk about in a minute because of the new rule change. But Enciso, Dingra coming on. Imagine you're a tired defender and you've got a fresh Billy Gilmore who's able to thread passes wherever he wants. You've got Evan Ferguson, who is an absolute beast. You've got Dingra and Enciso, who are direct and pacey. You are going to look at that and think, oh, damn, I'm in for a tough time. I mean, Chloe, before he did score, Ferguson hit the post. He just turned and shot. It was an instinctive shot from the lad. He is so exciting, such an exciting young player, and I think they were gushing over him on Match of the Day yesterday. He got our fourth, slid in, made it 4-1. Is this going to be a big year for young Evan?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to get quite a few goals. That finish, I just loved how he just flung himself at the ball. Just real sort of desire to get goals. I think he has, and yeah, he's just plays so well whenever he's on the pitch, and you think he can score. He's one of those players. He's on the pitch. You think, yeah, he's going to get a goal, because he's just so good at getting into those positions, and yeah, we've got lots of creative talent to get him the ball in those positions. And I just think it's so exciting. You look at the players we had on the bench. I think Ferguson had the most goals by a teenager last season. And then we also have Enciso, who scored the Premier League goal of the season and also got a few other goals. It's just so exciting, and they're all so young. It makes me feel old, seeing all these youngsters come through, but I think it's really exciting. And I do think, was it old Lineker saying that he wants Ferguson at Spurs for Kane's replacement? Go away. Just leave us alone, please. Can we just have a player for 5 minutes without someone trying to buy them? Like, seriously? But yeah, that's on that.
And you just knew that when a Dingra scored, just going back, when a Dingra scored yesterday, you just knew there were going to be all the tweets of where have Brighton spawned him from. But Pedro's what, 21? He's 21. A Dingra's 20, something like that. And then Ferguson's like 18. It's just ridiculous. And I think Brighton made up the majority of the goals scored by teenagers last season. Joe, I know you want to have your say on the Match of the Day comments, but also speak, if you can, about just how exciting this young Brighton squad is.
It's very exciting, and they're under the best manager that they could be under right now. I don't think I've ever seen a manager be this way towards the youngsters that are coming through and give them so much confidence to almost like the age-old comment, if you're good enough, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Yeah. And this links on to what I want to say about the Match of the Day comments. Evan Ferguson has spoken very highly of what he's doing at Brighton and how he's keeping his feet on the ground and how he is in the best possible moment he could be in, playing under a fantastic manager that believes in him. Take him out of that environment, you run the risk of ruining what could be a fantastic career. And I'm not saying that Tottenham would absolutely ruin him, but putting that pressure on a young lad to take him out of that system and say, you're the Harry Kane replacement. One, it's disrespectful to Brighton because we've just qualified for European football. You could argue that at the moment we are a better club to be at than Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think Tottenham will qualify for Europe this season as well. I think they're a club in total disarray. And to say, I'll take him out of that system to go and play at completely new to the league, Ange Postecoglou, whatever his name is, I think it's just completely disrespectful. One, to Evan Ferguson, who's been so good, and two, to Brighton, because of the journey we're on. And just to say, oh, just because it's Tottenham, look at that hole that Harry Kane's left. Evan Ferguson, probably the closest player to him, striker-wise in the Premier League, and that's credit to Evan. But to put that pressure on the young lad and to dub him that, I don't think it's fair. But that's just me probably trying to protect a young, very exciting footballer at our football club. But I think it's really disrespectful towards us.
To be fair, I don't think Daniel Levy would even consider going for Evan Ferguson, because if we're going to sell Caicedo for 100+ million, think of the price tag that we're going to put on young Evan. That's going to be fun when it eventually does happen. One player, Dagan, that I have to mention here then, because he got the assist for Evan Ferguson's goal. It's Pedros Goal. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal yesterday. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I'm really annoyed that he got a yellow card in the first half for having the audacity to stand still. But But generally speaking, Purvis, he's just going from strength to strength. And I think yesterday he had a really good game. What did you make of our Ecuadorian left back?
I mean, you could make a case right now he might be our most important player, just because of the shifts he puts in and how much he plays, how far he runs. As I said earlier, he makes a lot of it work. His partnership with Matoma is incredible. I think, whoever fills sort of that left side of the midfield more often and making that triangle with those two, it's going to be really, really key. He had a great partnership with Caicedo in that way, and I think that's something we'll have to rebuild with whoever comes in, who's new. But he's just reckless enough for whatever is called for, whether it's a saving tackle or just plowing up the field. And then his ability to cross the ball in is really, really great. So I thought he deserved to be on the score sheet in some way yesterday. And so I was happy to see him get it. And what just a gorgeous ball across the mouth of the goal.
Yeah, phenomenal player. Chloe, just really briefly before we get on to our player of the match segment, 7 extra minutes at the end of the game yesterday. We're ushering in this new era, I suppose, of the new rule of the referees adding on more time at the end of each half to accurately correspond with how much the ball's been out of play. As a fan who was sat in the ground, 7 extra minutes, how did you feel about that? Do you think it's a good step in the right direction to stop teams like Aston Villa from time wasting from the 5th minute?
Yeah, I mean, I do think something had to be done about all the time wasting, because it frankly can be quite ridiculous. I remember Villa at home last year, time wasting from the first half, and it is a bit ridiculous. But then on the other hand, you don't want 15 minutes added on in total really in these games. I mean, ours wasn't too bad because I don't think there was that much time wasting. It was just mainly for sort of any stoppages and obviously things like the penalties. Yeah, I was still a bit sort of like, oh, 7 minutes, where did that come from? But it went quick enough anyway, especially once we got that 4th. It was like, okay, yeah, we've won the game. Might as well just enjoy what's left. I think if we're up by 1 goal and there's 7 minutes left, that can be a bit sort of scary, because you think that's 7 minutes and it does go so slowly when you're sort of narrowly clinging on. But I think something did need to be done about time wasting, so I'm quite happy to see measures come in.
Let's hope we still feel that positive after we've played the aforementioned Aston Villa. So let's talk about player of the match then. I mean, we ended the game 4-1. We hit the post 3 times. A very positive game. Areas of improvement, definitely, but a really positive game. But Joe, who for you stood out amongst the rest?
There's one man and one man only. This is the only correct answer. Anyone else says anything different, I'll find you. James Milner. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I thought he was playing like a 20-year-old player, I think was what one of you guys said. And he just done everything flawlessly. The way he reads the game, the way he talks to the players around him, he is unbelievably important for this team now. There is no one that can say to me he's finished, he's past it, this, that, or the other. He is still a very, very, very capable Premier League player. Levels above most other players on that pitch yesterday. And yeah, very, very exciting. Very, impressed. I was a little bit like, oh, James Milner coming in. Like, is he past it? He's proved me wrong fully. And yeah, I give him the Joe Sayers Player of the Match award. You're welcome, James.
Yes, young James Milner, a very exciting future ahead of him. Dagan, who got your player of the match?
Well, it was a 3-horse race for me, and Milner was in that list, Joe. But you're gonna have to come for me because I'm not going to give it to him, because I think while his performance was great, I think it was great relative to our expectations of we've got a 37-year-old guy starting, and he was tremendous. but I don't think he was our best player yesterday. I think you can make a case for Purvis, as I said earlier, but I'm ultimately the only thing that would have kept him from getting this is that missed opportunity early in the game for João Pedro. But again, when I watched it back, I was like, he's just electric all the time. He causes problems. He drew the one pen. He could have drawn 2 others potentially. The goal that he missed early was arguably a pen. He, pulled himself back up off the ground and got in position to have that chance. A lot of players just would have, rolled around on the ground. The guy just does not stop. I think there will probably be many matches where I'll be saying this, but I couldn't let myself say otherwise. João Pedro's the man of the match.
Very good. And, good fighting for João Pedro's corner there. Chloe, who are you going to give it to?
Joe, you're not going to have to come for me because, I gave it to Milner as well. I think he did a job in that right. I think the main reason I really sort of noticed him was because I sit in the northwest corner, and so a lot of the good stuff he was doing was sort of right in front of me. So maybe that factors into my decision a bit. But yeah, I just thought he looked really good and made some good moves and did a job at that right back position. So yeah.
Fair's fair. Joe, you're going to have to come for me. I think you guys already know who I'm going to say.
So I've got to go. Like Chloe lives closer, so it would have been easier. But now I've got to go to Birmingham. Well, not Birmingham, but
it's the Black Country, actually.
Somewhere around there. And I've got to go to America. For goodness sake, guys.
I know. You're going to be getting your miles in, boy. I think you could probably already guess who I'm going to give it to. I'm going to give it to Purvis. I just think he's such a good player. I think there were some really good performances across the pitch. I think Milner definitely deserves a shout. João Pedro, excellent. Dahoud was good, but for me, I'm going to have to give it to Purvis because he's just so good. And got the assist at the end as well. So my boy Purvis gets the man of the match from me. So let's close the show then, guys, by talking about looking ahead to the next game, which I know Dagan's already been doing. Looking ahead to Wolves. Now, Wolves, Joe, are a team who are in a bit of disarray at the moment. They sacked their manager. Well, I say they've sacked. They parted ways with their head coach last week, I think it was, and they've reinstated. Gary O'Neill, the Bournemouth guy who was at Bournemouth last season. Their fans aren't the most optimistic about this coming season. Is this a chance, Joe, to almost have a perfect start and get another victory on the board?
A club in disarray, in need of positivity, with Brighton and Hove Albion visiting them. What could possibly go wrong? 1-0 Wolves. No, I think we have a very good opportunity to get 6 points on the board nice and early, set our president in stone and say Brighton and Hove Albion are not here to take part again. We're here to compete again. And I think it's a very good opportunity. I expect nothing less than 3 points. And it's not something I would normally say because I'm normally quite sort of on the fence because I don't want to make myself look stupid. But I think anything less than 3 points would be disappointing, to say the least. So, yeah, we go there and we give it to them and we make them even more upset with their football club. Sorry, Wolves fans.
What's your score prediction, Joe?
Oh, score prediction. 3-0 Brighton. And we'll go with João Pedro scoring again. We'll go with Matoma to get on the score sheet, please. I think that'll give him some nice confidence. And Evan Ferguson.
Very nice. I'll take that. Dagan, what are your thoughts ahead of the Wolves clash?
So our friendly, lovable Wolves have signed 3 players, and they have seen 14 leave the club so far this offseason. They've lost their manager. They are a team tremendously in transition. And again, not all those players are first team guys, but still that's a big exodus to not fill any of those holes. You could argue Neves was their best player last year, and he's gone. I think that coming in, they look like one of the worst 3 teams. I think I think they're worse than the team we played yesterday. I think there's a strong possibility of that. Yesterday, I think, had 15 shots on goal in the first half, and 3 were on target. Not great. In the second half, we had 12 shots on goal, 9 of them on target. And I think if that team shows up, if the team that's putting that many shots on goal and puts more like the second half on target as percentage, I think we're going to look like the team that we're supposed to look like. I know you want a score prediction, and I said 4-1 this past week, and you guys thought I was overdoing it, but here we are, 4-1. And my debate right now is between 5 and 6 for us and 1 and 0 for them. I'm going to be conservative and say 5-1 to the Albion.
That's fair. I mean, a repeat of the 6-goal thriller we saw at the Amex in the tail end of last season would be lovely. Chloe, what's your score prediction ahead of the game at Wolves, which you are attending at the Molineux?
Yeah, well, I've been to Molineux 3 times and we've won every time. So hopefully it'll be 4-4. And I'm gonna go with a 3-0 win.
I like it. And Chloe, if we do win again, you're never not allowed to go to the Molineux, which I'm really sorry about because it's Wolverhampton, and I apologise for the behalf of everyone on the Black Country about Wolverhampton. But yeah, you're going to have to just go every time, every single.
I like going. It's good to see Brighton win. So
yeah,
I like going because we win.
Yeah, let's say that we've got to keep it up. I am not going to the Molineux, which is ridiculous considering it's like 15 minutes away from me, but I couldn't get a ticket. It was gone.
Was you even born at the Golston, Tom?
I know.
Have a word with yourself, mate. Have a bloody word.
I was just one of those people who went to the Withdean. What's that about? I'm going to go. I think it's going to. I'm in line with Dagan on this one. I think we could go there and we could absolutely rinse them. I'm going to go with 5-0. I'm going to go big because I genuinely. I mean, and you know me, I'm quite level. I like to think of myself as quite level-headed. Never too up here, never too down there. But I'm going to go with 5-0. I think Wolves are in a bit of a moment, and my Wolves supporting friends are, as I say, they're not optimistic about this season at all. And I genuinely think if we turn up, we're just going to slice through them easy peasy. And this is the game where I really want Billy Gilmour to start because he will just have a field day pinging balls around in that midfield because they've lost their midfield general, the man who gets them ticking in the middle of the park. Put Billy Gilmour in there and he will just run them ragged. It's going to, I'm really looking forward to it. But now I've said 5-0. It's going to
announce 1-0 loss.
I know, announce 1-0
loss. Shush. The negativity. Tom, I love it.
I know, mate. It's good. I feel confident when I'm saying 5-0. Yeah, I genuinely, guys, I think it could be on, and we'll go top of the table on goal difference. Come on. Let us know your thoughts, viewers, in the comment section down below. What did you make of the game against Luton Town? What did you make of the finishers? Evan Ferguson and Simon Dingra coming on to score in the second half. Also, let us know your score predictions and your player of the match as well. So, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you to Joe, Dagan, and Chloe for joining us as well. Thank you for your input today, guys. It is a pleasure as always. All that's left for me to say is don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. Wherever you may be, whenever you may be, we will see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, y'all.